Hi there, and welcome once again to another great episode of STEM10 Plus. I will be your host for today, Beto Vasquez, and I am here to tell you how amazing plants are. Today's topic is going to be all about plants and adaptations that they develop in order to become better suited to survive in their environment. We are going to take a moment to walk around not only our neighborhoods, but our lawns and also local open spaces. To learn about three specific words, we're going to learn about, again, adaptations, predation, and reproduction. And we're going to learn how plants, in their amazing abilities, without being able to move, are able to sustain themselves, protect themselves, and to continue to exist. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and take a moment. This is going to be an immersive lesson today that's going to allow you to focus on exploration of plants around you. Join me as we're going to take a walk through Southeast San Diego and explore the vegetation in my yard, on my block, and in Radio Canyon. What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Come on. Good morning once again, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of STEM10 Plus. Today we're going to take a nature walk and talk about the different adaptations that plants have made in order to survive in their environments. Today we're going to be working in our backyard. We didn't want to show you plants that are going to be too far away from what you typically see. So we are in Radio Canyon here in Encanto, and we are going to see a few different characters, and we're going to discuss some of their adaptations as much as we can and cover as many as we can. So we'll start off today with a couple of plants that we see here at Pond the Entrance, and one of them being this wild cucumber here. Pretty interesting guy here. Wild cucumber actually is an epiphyte, so it's able to grow on top of another plant, and has these smaller, thinner leaves that don't require too much water to grow, but they have a real big surface area so they can capture as much sun as they need. And on this one, it's growing on top of this lemonade berry, which is defined by these more smaller leaves here with these little points, and are more sclerotized or waxy, harder cuticle that they have. And the lemonade berry for which it's named is actually right here. And if you were to take one of these and taste it, as you can see I got here on my fingernail, it's kind of like a sweet and sour type of treat that used to be used for drinks and such by our ancestors. Over on the side here immediately, we have what's called the laurel sumac plant, or the taco plant as it's recognized sometimes, because of the shape of the leaves here that look like tacos. Now, it's really not necessarily quite understood if the way that they're folded and curved down is so they can capture water and go back down to the roots, but it's thought to be like that. The other thing that you'll notice is that these leaves, and them being kind of folded in like taquitos here, it actually minimizes the surface area, and in minimizing the surface area, what happens is that then it's able to do a lot less evapotranspiration, or sweating, if you will. That way it doesn't lose as much water. Other plants are really dependent on developing smaller leaves so that they can capture the moisture in the breeze and the morning fog, so that they can minimize water loss. And as you see here, these little ones here are soon going to be leaves, and as they're growing they use these bigger ones, but then as they get bigger, then they really depend on something that's a little bit more spaced out and can capture more of that moisture from the morning breeze that they can use for themselves. So it's not only a plant out here, right? We also see that there's all types of different relationships between insects and different types of species, pollinators, maybe smaller rodents that are going to be eating either something that's feeding off of the plant itself or the plant itself. So when we're talking about plants, it's pretty exciting because plants cannot move and defend themselves, right? So they have to come up with these different adaptations to be able to survive, to be able to withstand the temperatures that they're in. In many cases, developing spikes, such as those seen on this flower here, can ward off any predators because they don't taste as good, right? Who wants to get spiked in their mouths as they're trying to eat? And so sometimes these can look very obvious. Sometimes they're a lot smaller. They look like hairs, but it actually is pretty impressive how these plants have grown to evolve over time to be able to survive these environments that they're in. Additionally, one of my favorite out here is sage. And so sage, we'll see here in just a moment. Here in San Diego, we can see it in a natural environment as black sage, which is this one here, which really isn't black. It's more like a purple, lavenderish type color with a strong aroma. Smells great if you were to touch it as such and just come up and smell your fingers. You can see why it was so popular by indigenous groups here before, and why it still continues to be one of the favorites around here for bees and such. Likewise, other plants such as the cactus, or in this case, the cholla's cactus, has developed different ways to protect itself, to conserve water as much as they can, to be able to thrive and show off its beauty here in these dry, arid environments. And so not all plants can typically survive in these types of environments where there's a little bit of water and there's a lot of heat. But the cactus is a great example of how that happens. And so if we look closely here, what we might recognize as needles are really leaves. They're just a different type of modified leaf. And so with this leaf, it also, like the other plant we just saw earlier, is able to ward off any predators from eating it, therefore protecting its natural resources that it has stored up. And now here we come across one of my other favorite plants, which is the white sage. So white sage is very beautiful, first of all. I love the fragrance of it. Very symbolic for me as we have gone to different cultural events, and you can most of the time smell either copal or sage that's burning in the background. And so what's really interesting about white sage here is that right now it's a little moist because it's early in the morning, but typically if you look at these carefully in the sun, you'll notice that it has these little hairs that help again to regulate the loss of water. It also the scent of it also wards off certain critters from coming and eating it, but then also this white coating that's caused by the hair, it's an albedo, it's called. It actually helps to not absorb so much heat as plants that are darker typically tend to do. So again, another protective adaptation that sage has taken. I wish you could be here and you could smell it, but you can't, so I'll have to smell it for you. But yeah, this is another very beautiful plant. Again, this is white sage. The other one that we saw earlier was the black sage. Overall, what we learned today is that plants are pretty unique and pretty amazing, and they get a pretty bad rap sometimes. You know, when we talk about wildlife, we talk about biology, we have the tendency to focus on animals most of the time because they seem to be a little bit more exciting or cute. But plants really are just amazing because they're not able to move, yet they have to find ways to survive. And so whether it's by developing sclerotized waxy leaves or harder leaves or spiny leaves or some kind of a chemical to ward off its predators, or tap roots that go far and long to be able to acquire water, You have to be pretty amazed by these adaptations that have been created to make sure that they continue to exist and are here for one another and for us to enjoy. Thank you. Didn't I tell you plants were going to be amazing? I mean, today we got to take a close look at some of the adaptations that plants have developed so they could avoid being eaten, to conserve resources, to be able to reproduce. And we saw different examples, right, about leaf size and surface area, the orientation which certain leaves are, how thick those leaves are to make themselves less appetizing or to minimize water loss. We saw physical characteristics like on the edges of some of the leaves, they were a little bit more spiky. We saw thorns in flowers and in cactus. We even saw some little white hair on sage, right, that helps to minimize water loss. We also learned about chemical properties and how some plants like milkweed or castor, have these chemical properties to make themselves taste yucky and not be eaten so much. We also learned about sweet smells that attract certain pollinators to help the plants reproduce. So in recap, I wanted to share with you the important words that we learned today. One, adaptation, which is a process by which there's change in the way a plant is or exists so it can be better suited to survive in its environment. The other word was predator, right, or an organism that eats something else. In this case, we can also think about predation, which is the act of being eaten. And the last one was reproduction, or a plant, in this case, a plant's ability to be able to reproduce and make more of that plant in different places. So I also wanted to take a moment to invite you all to get creative and make some drawings where you make up your own plants, where you come up with your own species of plants and think about questions like, where would your plant exist? Would it be in wet weather or dry weather? Would it have small or large leaves, and why? And what types of predators would it have? And how would your plant defend itself? And then when you're done, we really want to invite you to send those in. Send those in because we would love to share your beautiful drawings and let the world know the creativity that's out there. If you do plan on going out to take a walk and check out the plants, we ask that you just be respectful of the nature that's out there. We're not going out there to break things or damage them in any chance or in any way. We ask that you just be mindful of that and you touch lightly and you look from afar, and then also be careful too, because sometimes depending on the individual or the individual plant, there can cause some allergic reactions. So speak with your parents, be knowledgeable when you go out there, but most importantly, have fun. There's science all around you. Enjoy it.